PNC, America's Black News Channel. Watch us on all major cable providers and major streaming platforms. Finally, news that speaks to us.
We've been covering day 2 of Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court confirmation hearing. Earlier today, I had a chance to speak with Senate Judiciary Committee member Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island. We are now in the second day of confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. How do you feel like the confirmation hearings are going so far?
I think for her, they're going well. She's showing a lot of patience. In fact, I think more patience than many of us would have, and giving very clear answers, well-founded in the law, and I think is holding up well in what is a 12-hour ordeal for her, with a lot of hostile and trappy questioning being laid for her. This isn't a friendly conversation. You've got a lot of people who really want to score points on her.
You were able to talk to her before the confirmation hearings began, before you were able to question her. What struck you most during your private conversations with the judge?
Very engaging personality, very good listener, and we share a common friend, I guess I would say, in that the appellate judge that she clerked for is a Rhode Islander who, in Rhode Island, we all know Bruce Selya, and she had a very close relationship with him. He's a Reagan appointee who has gone out of his way to speak in glowing terms about how terrific she'll be on the Supreme Court.
There was a lot of talk yesterday about dark money. You spoke about that yesterday, but you went into further detail about that today. You made a point of saying that there's a difference between dark money cheering for a nominee and dark money actually picking Supreme Court justices, which you contend happened during Donald Trump's presidency. Could you expound on why you thought that was important to kind of underscore your point on that today?
Yeah, because the Republicans spent a good deal of the first day trying to critique Democrats and critique Judge Jackson as being sort of tools of, I think, liberal activist dark money was their catchphrase. And while there is some dark money on our side, we're playing by their rules on this. They're the ones who set up and protected dark money. So it's a little frustrating to hear this complaint. And the difference is a profound one. We can demonstrate quite clearly that dark money interests made the selection of the last 3 Supreme Court justices. We can't figure out exactly who, that's what they're hiding, but we can show how it was done. And it's a very different thing for secretive, anonymous interests to have put 3 judges onto the Supreme Court than it is for a group that is funded by anonymous donors to be speaking in the public domain and just offering its opinion, rooting for a candidate. There's something a lot more pernicious about planted judges on the Supreme Court.
Some of the Republican comments so far in the confirmation hearings seem to be trying to relitigate the confirmation hearings of Judge Kavanaugh, and in so doing, drawing a parallel that does not exist. Kavanaugh was accused of sexual assault. That is not an accusation that has been made against Judge Jackson. How do you see what is happening about this kind of relitigation of Kavanaugh's hearing and using Jackson as a vehicle for that?
Well, you remember the old pictures in the Soviet Union when somebody went out of favor, and the next thing you know, the pictures would have a new photograph with the face erased out of the old photograph. They're trying to erase Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who alleged this assault, came into the committee, gave testimony under professional cross-examination by a prosecutor hired just to discredit her. And when all that failed, they went into grievance mode and shoved his confirmation through anyway. So it's a completely different set of circumstances, and they are pretending that she didn't exist, that her testimony never came into the room, and that she was able to survive really without a punch the administrations of the professional prosecutor that they set on her. So it's a rewriting of history, and it's unpleasant to have to listen to it, but that's not our point right now. Our point right now is that we've got a supremely qualified justice ready to go, and we hope that she'll be confirmed, with any luck, with a bipartisan vote.
Some of the other questioning seems to be getting at her rulings as it relates to people who were convicted of crimes and whether or not she was softer on them than prosecutors would have liked, and therefore, getting into a larger, more political discussion about whether or not Democrats, and using her as a proxy, are soft on crime. How much do you think this question is really not even about her, but about midterms and about 2024?
I think for some people, it's all about showing their chops for their presidential aspirations. I mean, we had questions from senators asking her about critical race theory books that she'd never seen, that she'd never read, that were supposedly part of the curriculum of a school and classes that she'd never attended. But she was on the board. Well, you know what people on the board of a school do? They raise money. They don't do the curriculum. So, they're really stretching to get into the cultural battles, the right-wing red meat. And she's just been refusing to go there. And I think that's been very wise on her part. I think the recent questions about her departing from what the prosecutors want, well, I was a federal prosecutor, and I got to say, I actually have a lot of respect for the probation officers who do the pre-sentence report. She tends to follow the pre-sentence report, not the prosecutors, and they completely omitted the fact of a pre-sentence report in their setup questioning. It was as if there was the prosecutor and that was it, and she wouldn't follow the prosecutor, and that was wrong. Well, actually, there's somebody else from the government in the room too, and it's the probation office, and they do a very thorough job. I really came to admire their work in my years as a United States attorney.
Some people now believe that the Senate confirmation hearings for Supreme Court justices have become a bit toothless and a bit more theater than they are substance. And this was underscored by Kavanaugh, as they were pointing out. If you cannot even put the brakes on a confirmation for these very damning accusations about him and conduct a thorough investigation as to whether or not those accusations are true, then does the process itself end up being a bit toothless and theatrical? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is theater. I think that unfortunately there's been an enormous amount of damage done to the process in the mad hustle to stop Judge Garland, shove Judge Gorsuch onto the court as fast as they could, shove Kavanaugh onto the court through all of his woes and problems, and then shove Judge Barrett onto the court in violation of the very rule that they said required them to block Garland. So wherever you look, there is broken Senate precedent, broken Senate norms, broken Senate rules. Thankfully, we have done none of that in this current confirmation process. But the damage that was done to get these last 3 Federalist Society justices onto the court is very, very real and haunts us still, I think.
There is a big affirmative action case coming before the court. There's already some talk about whether or not Judge Jackson, if confirmed to the court, could recuse herself in that particular case. Do you believe that Judge Jackson should recuse herself in that case?
That's a decision that I think she has to make. I think that the pattern of the existing Supreme Court has been to not recuse, even when there are significant conflicts of interest. So I think there's a larger problem with the court and its refusal to take its own recusal responsibilities seriously. And we do need to address that larger problem. However, Justice Jackson would decide her recusal in the Harvard matter.
Senator Whitehouse, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks. Like I said, love your column.